One observes out there people who, in the eyes of the world, seem to have conquered everything: careers, relationships, possessions. But in the silence of the night, when the masks fall, a cold and persistent sensation emerges, an inexplicable emptiness, a hunger in the soul that nothing seems to satisfy. And have you ever found yourself in this same silent labyrinth, seeking answers in places that only echo your own disenchantment? That feeling that, despite all efforts, a fundamental piece of the puzzle of your existence remains stubbornly lost. Well then, there is a map for this inner territory, a path unveiled by one of the most audacious explorers of the human mind, Carl Jung. He dared to name the unnameable and bequeath to us a truth, often inconvenient, almost forbidden, about the root of this incompleteness. A perspective so radically different that, once understood, has the power to reconfigure your entire search for meaning. It is not just another variation of what you've already heard. It is the unveiling of an entirely new horizon. As Jung himself stated, what you resist persists. What is denied dominates you. A statement that echoes directly at the origin of your emptiness. But what if this resistance, this denial, is precisely where your greatest strength lies? The key to an authenticity you barely dare to dream of. And what if the fear of facing this forbidden truth is, ironically, what keeps you chained to this emptiness? What happens when you decide to stop running and look directly at that which society, and perhaps you yourself, taught you to fear? To understand this profound dynamic, we need to delve into the concepts of the human psyche as explored by Jung's analytical psychology. He not only mapped the superficial layers of the mind, but descended into the cellars of the soul, where our deepest fears reside and, paradoxically, our most luminous potential. In these recesses of the psyche, Jung identified the foundations of our individuality, including those crucial facets that, due to pain, convenience, or social decree, we learn to hide from ourselves, the so-called shadow. And it is precisely in the neglected dialogue with this shadow, or in its systematic rejection, that he found the master key to deciphering the persistent origin of so much inner emptiness that haunts the modern individual. This video is an invitation to tread this Jungian path together, to unveil the forbidden truth about why you truly feel empty, how the denial of this vital shadow not only fragments you, but also prevents you from accessing your most authentic strength and your truest sense of purpose. Prepare yourself, because what Carl Jung reveals to us about true self-knowledge and the healing of this existential emptiness goes far beyond and much deeper than the palliative solutions the world out there usually offers. We are about to confront what it truly means to be whole. Chapter 1: Secret Emptiness, the Soul's Epidemic. You feel a persistent echo in your chest, a subtle resonance that, despite all the achievements and distractions that modern life so generously offers, something is still missing. It's not an acute pain most of the time. It's more like a chronic hunger, a thirst that no drink seems to quench completely, an uncomfortable sensation of watching your own life through frosted glass, where the colors seem faded and connections, somehow, rarefied. This is not your fault, a personal idiosyncrasy. What you feel is, in fact, the symptom of a much broader condition, a kind of soul sickness of our era. We live immersed in a social script that is sold to us from the cradle, an instruction manual for happiness that involves pursuing external goals, accumulating validations, and wearing personas that often resemble armor more than authentic expressions of our being. And we are told that if we follow this script to the letter, we will find fulfillment. But is it really so? The uncomfortable truth, the one rarely dared to be whispered in the polished corridors of conformity, is that this incessant pursuit of having and appearing often brutally distances us from being. Each step towards an externally fabricated ideal can be a step away from your inner landscape, from your most visceral truth. And it is in this self-imposed exile, in this disconnection from the depths of your own psyche, that the feeling of emptiness finds fertile ground to take root and grow, silently, until it becomes a constant companion. Think carefully. How many of your daily choices are genuinely yours? and how many are echoes of others' expectations, implanted fears, or desires not born in your own heart? How many times have you smiled when you wanted to scream, or remained silent when your soul yearned to express itself? This dissonance, this internal civil war between who you truly are and who the world expects you to be, is exhausting, and it exacts a high price: your vitality, your spontaneous joy, and ultimately, your sense of wholeness. But what exactly is this visceral truth that we are losing? What part of us is so crucial that its absence reverberates like a constant echo of incompleteness? And more importantly, how does Jung's analytical psychology begin to offer us not just a diagnosis for this malaise, but a surprising path to reclaim what has been lost? If you're finding this content helpful, please subscribe to the channel. Thanks for your support. Chapter 2. The Shadow Revealed. Your inner enemy is your greatest power. The answer to this quest, to this visceral truth that escapes us, lies in a central concept, and perhaps one of the most radically transformative of Carl Jung's analytical psychology. Prepare yourself, because we are talking about a part of you so fundamental that its absence is not just felt as an emptiness, but as the loss of a primary color from the palette of your existence. Carl Jung called it the shadow. Now, the word shadow may evoke images of darkness, of something negative or threatening. And indeed, the shadow can contain aspects that we consider undesirable: our repressed anger, our most childish fears, our secret envy, our rawest impulses. These are the characteristics that from a very early age we learned were not acceptable or good, first by our family, then by school, by friends, by culture as a whole. To be loved, to be accepted, to survive socially, we began unconsciously to prune parts of ourselves, pushing them into the dark cellars of our psyche. This is the invisible architect of your emptiness, a continuous process of self-amputation in the name of conformity. But herein lies the first hidden revelation, the first great awakening that the Jungian perspective offers us. Your shadow is not merely a repository of badness or weaknesses. On the contrary, it is also home to immense and often positive potential. Think about it. In that same dark box where you locked away your inappropriate aggressiveness may also lie your assertiveness, your ability to set boundaries, your untamed life force. Where you hid your excessive sensitivity may reside your deepest empathy, your sharpest intuition, your capacity for genuine connection. Where you buried your childish rebelliousness may lie your most original creativity, your courage to question the status quo, your capacity for innovation. Society, in its incessant quest for order and conformity, often teaches us to fear and reject precisely the qualities that would make us more whole, more vibrant, more dangerously authentic, and in doing so, we ourselves become accomplices in the construction of this inner emptiness. Rejecting the shadow does not make it disappear, it only renders it unconscious and, often, more powerful in its ability to influence us in ways we do not understand. What you do not consciously own owns you from behind. This is the cruel paradox. The very effort to create an acceptable, enlightened, and flawless social persona is what, ironically, feeds the darkness of inner emptiness. You become a stranger to vast parts of yourself. And how can anyone feel whole when essential parts of their own soul have been exiled and labeled as enemies? Chapter 3. The Unconscious Shadow. The signs that it sabotages your life. So, this shadow, this submerged continent of our psyche, teeming with both feared monsters and forgotten treasures, does not remain passive in its exile, far from it. As Carl Jung tirelessly demonstrated, that which we do not bring into the light of consciousness does not dissolve. On the contrary, it gains a life of its own and projects its influence in subtle, yet profoundly sabotaging ways upon our behavior, our relationships, and our perception of reality. It's as if there were ghosts in the mirror, distorting our reflection and the world we see. One of the most treacherous and common ways the unrecognized shadow operates is through the mechanism of projection. Jung observed with disconcerting clarity that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. Think of those people who get on your nerves, whose flaws seem to leap out at you with disproportionate intensity. Or conversely, those whom you idolize almost blindly. Often, What we see, or what we refuse to see, in others, is a direct reflection of aspects of our own shadow, qualities or flaws that we deny in ourselves. As Jung would put it, we are, in fact, fighting with or falling in love with fragments of our own soul, externalized. And as long as we do not recognize this, our relationships will be doomed to be minefields of misunderstandings and frustrations, perpetuating that inner emptiness we so desperately seek to heal. But the sabotage doesn't stop there. The unintegrated shadow is often the root of chronic self-sabotage. Have you ever wondered why, at times, you seem to take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back regarding your most important goals? Why you procrastinate on crucial tasks or make decisions that, in retrospect, seem to go against your best interests? Carl Jung taught us that, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This invisible force that seems like fate is, often, your unintegrated shadow, containing fears, like the fear of success or of your own capability, internalized limiting beliefs, or unconscious loyalties to old patterns, all operating below the radar of your consciousness, ensuring you remain safe in your comfort zone, even if that zone is emptiness itself. Furthermore, the pressure of the repressed shadow can erupt in compulsive behaviors, disproportionate emotional outbursts, or a persistent feeling of anxiety and irritability without apparent cause. These are like muffled cries from your psyche, signs that important parts of you are being neglected and are crying out for attention. Jung understood these symptoms not as mere pathologies to be suppressed, but as valuable messages from the soul. He even stated that depression is like a woman in black. If she appears, do not drive her away. Invite her in, offer her a seat, treat her as a guest, and listen to what she wants to say. This woman in black can be the personification of your neglected shadow, bringing news of what needs to be integrated so that emptiness can give way to wholeness. Recognizing these ghosts in the mirror is the first step to disarming them. It is a call to brutal honesty with oneself, an invitation to question, where in my life am I living out the scripts of my shadow instead of my conscious truth? And what is this shadow, if listened to correctly, desperately trying to tell me about the path to my wholeness? Chapter 4. The Gold in Your Shadow. Discover the hidden power within you. If, until now, the journey through your inner landscape has seemed like a plunge into turbulent waters, prepare yourself for a shift in perspective that can redefine your relationship with what you most fear in yourself. For the shadow, as Carl Jung so penetratingly revealed to us, is not merely a dark cellar where we accumulate our psychological debris. It is, paradoxically, an abandoned mine, full of veins of pure gold, the treasures of your unlived soul. Remember what we discussed. The shadow is formed by everything that, for some reason, was considered unacceptable for your persona, for the social mask you needed to construct. But reflect, what is unacceptable to a society that often values conformity over individuality, superficial politeness instead of raw passion, obedience in place of disruptive assertiveness? Often, what we exile to the shadow are not just our flaws, but our most potent qualities, our most untamed vital energy, our wildest creativity, our capacity to feel and love with radical depth. Everything that, perhaps, was too much for the environment in which we grew up, or for the limiting expectations imposed upon us. Jung used to say that, in the shadow lies the gold. And what is this gold? It might be that powerful ambition of yours that was labeled as greed or arrogance, and which, if integrated, could propel you to extraordinary achievements. It might be your righteous anger, the kind that arises in the face of injustice, but that you learn to swallow for fear of conflict, and which, if channeled, would become a driving force for change. It might be your deep vulnerability and sensitivity, seen as weakness in a world that preaches toughness, but which are, in fact, the source of your empathy, your intuition, and your ability to create authentic human connections. It might even be your exuberant joy, your childlike spontaneity, your vibrant sexuality, everything that didn't fit the mold of the serious and controlled adult, and was relegated to darkness. As Jung elucidated, the process of individuation, becoming a complete, unified, and authentic individual, which for him was the central goal of life, intrinsically depends on the courage to confront and integrate these shadow aspects. He stated, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This conscious darkness is not a state of negativity, but a state of wholeness, where you have access to the full spectrum of your humanity. True strength, the authenticity we so ardently seek, does not lie in constructing an impeccable persona free of apparent flaws. That is a mirage that only deepens the inner emptiness. Genuine strength is born from the humility and courage to recognize and embrace all your parts, to bring the ghosts from the previous chapter into the light and discover that many of them are, in fact, powerful disguised allies, bearers of your most precious gifts. Facing your shadow is, therefore, less about fixing something broken and more about rescuing something incredibly valuable that was lost. It is the only path to transcend superficiality and find an inner solidity that nothing and no one can shake. Chapter 5. Confronting your shadow, the beginning of change. You have discovered that emptiness has an architect, that your shadow is not the monster it was painted to be, and that within it reside treasures of inestimable value for your wholeness. The question that now pulses is, I am convinced of the importance, but how, in practice, do I begin to turn on the light in this cellar? How do I initiate this conversation with the parts of myself I have exiled? That is precisely what we are going to explore now. And the good news is that, although profound, this journey can begin with conscious and accessible steps. Before the techniques, however, we need to cultivate the right inner terrain. Carl Jung emphasized that shadow work demands, above all, moral honesty and courage. It's not a walk in the park, it's an act of bravery to look at what we would rather ignore. But, along with courage, two allies are indispensable: radical self-compassion. You will encounter aspects of yourself that you may not like. Remember, these parts were formed as survival mechanisms or were repressed due to pain. Welcome them with the same compassion you would offer a wounded friend. Explorer's curiosity. Abandon the whip of judgment and adopt the lantern of curiosity. Ask why and what does this want to tell me, instead of labeling and condemning. With this stance, let's move on to some initial practices for this dialogue with the shadow. First step, the art of penetrating self-observation. Begin to become a detective of your own emotional reactions, those outbursts of anger that seem disproportionate, that envy that corrodes, that almost idolatrous admiration for someone, or even that severe judgment you pass on others. Carl Jung reminds us that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. These intense reactions are often portals to your shadow. Write them down without a filter. Ask yourself, what part of me is being activated here? What belief of mine is being challenged? What would this emotion, if I stripped it of judgment, be trying to communicate to me about an unmet need or a repressed quality? Second step, unmasking your projections. In the previous chapter, we talked about the ghosts in the mirror. Now, the invitation is to start collecting these projections. When you identify a strong reaction to someone, do the exercise of asking yourself, in what way does this characteristic that bothers me so much or fascinates me in the other person also exist in me, even if subtly or denied? This is a work of humility, but, as Jung pointed out, it is a direct path to self-knowledge. By withdrawing your projections, you not only cleanse your relationships, but also recover vital psychic energy that was being spent on external battles, redirecting it towards your internal growth. Third step, the shadow journal and imaginative dialogue. Set aside a notebook specifically for this work. In it, you can record dreams. Jung considered dreams the royal road to the unconscious. Write down your dreams, especially those with unknown dark figures or figures that cause you discomfort. These figures can be personifications of your shadow. Write letters, unsent, to people who activate your shadow or to parts of yourself that you reject. Allow yourself to express everything without censorship. Practice active dialogue, simplified. Imagine this shadow part of you as a figure. Give it a voice. Ask it what it wants, what it fears, what it has to offer. You might be surprised by the answers that emerge from your own depths. Jung believed that he who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Fourth step, creative expression as a valve and mirror. Painting, writing, music, dance, any form of artistic expression can be a powerful channel for the shadow to manifest safely and be integrated. Often, what we cannot articulate in words, art can express. Allow yourself to create without judgment, letting these internal energies guide your hand or your voice. Remember, these are the first steps of a journey that can last a lifetime. It is not about eliminating the shadow, but about continuously integrating it, becoming increasingly conscious and therefore more whole. In doing so, you are not just healing an inner emptiness, you are actively building a life with more meaning, authenticity, and a strength that emanates from within. Chapter 6. The 6 Gifts for an Authentic and Fulfilling Life. If you have ventured through the first steps in dialoguing with your shadow, if you have chosen the courage of self-observation and compassion for the totality of your being, then you have already planted the seeds of a transformation that transcends the mere absence of emptiness. What begins to flourish is not just relief, but a radically richer, more vibrant and authentic quality of life. Carl Jung described this path as the process of individuation, the journey to become who you truly are in your unique fullness. And the fruits of this journey are the most precious gifts the psyche can offer. Imagine first, radical authenticity settling into your life. Think of the profound liberation of no longer needing to perform, of no longer spending colossal energy sustaining masks that do not serve you. By embracing your shadow, you allow yourself to be seen, with your strengths and vulnerabilities, and discover that it is precisely in this integrity that your greatest magnetism resides. Your life becomes an honest reflection of your inner self. Your decisions are guided by your deepest values, and the peace that comes from being aligned with yourself is unshakable. The need for external approval drastically diminishes as you find a center of validation within yourself. Connected to this, notice a renewed vitality and psychic energy. Remember that image of holding a beach ball underwater? The repression of the shadow is exactly that, a constant effort that drains your life force. When you integrate these energies, when what was internal conflict becomes conscious fuel, an immense amount of energy is released. You wake up with more drive, face challenges with more vigor, and rediscover a passion for life you might have thought was lost forever. This is not a peak of euphoria, but a constant and sustainable flow of inner strength. And what about unlocked creativity and intuition? The shadow, as we have already explored, is a reservoir of unexpressed potential, of originality, of unconventional ways of seeing and interacting with the world. By allowing these aspects to come to the surface, you open channels for a creativity that can manifest in all areas of your life, not just in the arts, but in problem solving, in the way you relate to others, in your career. Your intuition, that inner compass, becomes sharper, a reliable guide amidst life's complexity. You begin to trust your inner wisdom more and to make decisions that truly resonate with your soul. Your relationships also transform profoundly. By reducing projections and becoming more aware of your own triggers and needs, you become capable of interacting with others from a place of greater clarity, empathy, and honesty. Toxic dynamics lose their power. You attract and cultivate more genuine connections, where intimacy is not frightening, but a safe space for mutual growth. The quality of your bonds deepens, and the feeling of loneliness, even when accompanied, begins to dissipate, giving way to real belonging. Emotional resilience and practical wisdom also develop. Life will continue to present its challenges, its losses, its pains, but your ability to navigate these turbulent waters expands immensely. As Jung taught us, life is not about avoiding pain, but about finding meaning in it. By knowing and integrating your shadow, you no longer fear your own emotions so much. You learn to extract lessons from them. You become like a tree with deep roots, which can sway with the wind but does not break, emerging from each challenge stronger and wiser. And perhaps the most profound of all gifts, a renewed sense of purpose and meaning emerges. When you approach your totality, when your life becomes a more authentic expression of who you are, your unique role in the grand scheme of things begins to become clear. It is not something you need to frantically seek on the outside. It blossoms from within as a natural consequence of your journey of individuation. The emptiness that once consumed you is filled by a sense of contribution, of living a life that has intrinsic value and that reverberates positively in the world around you. These are the horizons that open up when you not only recognize but actively embrace and integrate the totality of your being. It is an invitation to live more fully, more courageously, and infinitely more rewardingly. Well, we have reached the end of our journey today. Together, we have navigated the labyrinths of inner emptiness, that echo that haunts so many in modern life. We have unveiled that its origin often does not lie in external flaws, but in the disconnection from a vital and misunderstood part of ourselves, the shadow. You have discovered that this shadow, as Carl Jung so brilliantly taught us, is not just a repository of our difficulties and fears, but also the guardian of our most precious treasures, our unlived strength, our repressed creativity, our purest authenticity. We have seen how recognizing it, dialoguing with it, and gradually integrating it is not a path of self-flagellation, but of a courageous rescue of your totality, the only path to a truly full, vibrant, and meaningful life. The forbidden truth is that the key to filling your emptiness and awakening your most luminous potential is not somewhere distant in some future external achievement, but right there in the neglected depths of your own psyche. The power to transform your inner reality and consequently your life experience already resides within you. The journey towards individuation, towards encountering your most complete self, is the most vital invitation life can offer you. Now, I ask you to reflect honestly with yourself. What came to your mind when we spoke of your shadow? What part of you, buried, forgotten, or denied, now cries out to be faced head-on? If this video resonated with you, if a new perspective has begun to brighten your horizons, then I invite you to take an active part in this community of seekers. Like this video so that more people can find this message. Share your reflection on the question I asked in the comments below. Your journey can inspire and validate that of many others. And, of course, subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss our upcoming content. See you in the next video.